Florida State and Colorado are terrible. They're absolutely terrible, and I'm here for it. In the case of Florida State, especially, I'm really enjoying it after the way their fans have acted over the last 8 or 9 months. And in terms of Colorado, there aren't really any Colorado fans. The Colorado fans that do exist, I actually feel kind of bad for. But to the Deion stands, it is funny to watch them melt away. But anyway, both of these podunk, terrible teams play this weekend in sort of must-win spots. The pressure is mounting in both of these places. Florida State is hosting a Group of 5 team. Memphis, Colorado, playing on the road at a Group of 5 team, Colorado State. We're going to start with the Florida State and the Memphis game. Florida State's, a touchdown favorite? That's it? That can't be right. Let me look again. Florida State's a touchdown favorite at home against Memphis. Florida State's been terrible. Just a few numbers here. They're 89th in the country in total offense. Florida State is 89th. There's only, 64 Power 4 teams? They're 89th in total offense, 114th on the ground. They're out of 134 teams. They're 114th on the ground. They're 67th in total defense, 111th against the run. They're 80th in turnovers, defense. They're bad. I'm stating the obvious. I'm not telling you anything you don't know here. Here's the way I look at this game with Florida State. This is their last hoorah for this season. Now, I don't think they're winning the ACC. That's their only path to the playoff at this point, would be to somehow win the ACC. But you got to keep in mind that even though they've only lost 2 games, they're both conference games. They're 0-2 in conference play, but by some miracle, if they were to get to the ACC championship, I just don't think they would win it. But they're not even getting there. But and in terms of an at-large thing, if they were to run the table and finish 10-2, I don't know, maybe. But if they lose this one here, they can just forget it. So here's the way I sort of look at this game coming into it. 2 games they've played is enough time, I think, for a coaching staff to kind of look around, diagnose, see what's wrong, and attempt to fix it, especially considering the fact they're coming off of a bye week. So you played 2 games. You've had an opportunity to see your offense, your defense, your lines of scrimmage, your skill position players, your quarterback play, whatever the case. You say, okay, through 2 games, we're struggling here, and here. These are the position groups. These are the players, blah, 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 blah. And then you have a bye week, which gives you 2 weeks of practice to implement whatever changes, whether it be personnel, philosophical, playbook changes, strategy changes, play calling, scheme, whatever it is. And if they're able to do all that, senior play, coaching staff, seen 2 games, had 2 weeks now to prepare. Given all that, if they come out here and lose again to Memphis, I'm just done with them. I mean, it would just be humiliating. Memphis, on the other hand, this is a big game for Memphis for a couple of different reasons. Number one, Mike Norvell, of course, came from Memphis. So Mike Norvell was the coach there, before he got the job at Florida State. So, you have that angle. Memphis, being a Group of 5 team, is fighting for the 1 playoff spot reserved for the Group of 5. And even before Florida State face planted the first 2 weeks of the season, this was a game Memphis was looking forward to as sort of a proving ground game. The knock against the Power 5, a lot of times, their schedule, they don't play anybody, they don't beat anybody. So in the rare occasion, they do get an opportunity to play a Group of 5 team. And in the offseason, it looked like this would be a game against a good Power 4 team for Memphis, a Group of 5. They have to win that. You have to win that, right? It's hard to try to convince the playoff committee you belong in the playoffs if you can't beat some run-of-the-mill Power 4 team, right? In this case, Florida State. So it's a big game for both teams. Memphis needs it. Florida State needs it. I think Mike Norvell needs it. Not that he's in any danger of getting fired. Florida State's so stupid they gave this guy a huge extension after last year, even though he's horrendous. If Florida State loses here, they're most likely going to have a losing record this season. They would be 0-3 with 9 games to go. That includes games against Clemson, which at this point looks like a loss. games against Miami, which at this point looks like a loss. In other words, if they start 0-3, it's hard then to find, 7 wins left on the schedule so that they could somehow finish 7-5. It looks like, probably 6-6, 5-7. This is Mike Norvell's 5th year there. He's already had 2 losing seasons out of his first 4. If things go sideways here, another losing season, you're looking at a head coach that you just gave a massive extension to that's had 3 losing seasons in his 5 years as coach there. It's not good. You're going to end up with a Jimbo Fisher situation, which is funny because you had your own Jimbo Fisher situation with Jimbo Fisher a decade ago. You find yourself in the same thing here with Mike Norvell. I just don't trust Florida State. Now, here's the thing. There's a few teams that are playing this week that I'm taking a similar approach to. It's teams that have not been impressive, teams that have underperformed, teams that have looked bad, and the idea that suddenly some kind of light switch is going to come on 3 weeks into the season that didn't come on during spring, didn't come on during summer camp, didn't come on during fall workouts, didn't come on during preseason practice leading up to the games. It didn't happen in practice between games. Suddenly just something's going to happen. I'm not falling for that. I mean, if I'm going to be wrong on these handful of games here, Florida State, Colorado, Oregon, all 3 have extremely interesting games this week. In fact, let's throw Oregon in. We'll talk about Oregon in this video too. Florida State is hosting Memphis. Colorado on the road at Colorado State, and Oregon on the road at Oregon State. These 3 teams, Colorado, Florida State, and Oregon, none of them have looked like what we were told they would look like in the offseason. Now, 2 of them are surprising to me. One of them's not. It's no surprise to me that Colorado is circling the bowl. That's not a surprise. Let's stick with Florida State, then we'll go Colorado, then we'll go Oregon. Memphis has everything to play for here. And in a way, I guess Florida State does too. But my God, again, you've seen them play 2 weeks. The lines of scrimmage are horrendous. DJ Ukulele is one of the worst quarterbacks in the Power 4. Again, okay, you saw DJU play for 3 years. What? He was going to come to Florida State and swallow some magic pill and become good? No, people are what they are at a certain point. DJ was not a good quarterback for the 3 years we've watched him play other places. This just in, still not a good quarterback. Florida State, not been a good team the first 2 times we've seen them play this season. Likely to not be very good this week either. And for Memphis, it's a must-win game. Memphis is a balanced team. Their quarterback is the all-time passing leader at the school. Their running back just went over 100 yards last week. Their defense ranks higher than Florida State's in almost every major category. I don't know if Memphis can go in there and win this game. Look, it's really hard for a Group of 5 team to beat a Power 5 team under any circumstances. And Florida State being the back against the wall thing, they're going to give it everything they got. But I know this. There's no way with a straight face I could bet money on Florida State. If you bet on Florida State and lose, you look like an absolute fool. You just look like an absolute idiot. If I'm going to lose, I'm going to lose going down with Memphis. I'm going to take Memphis into 7 points here. I don't know why Memphis is a 7-point. I don't know what Florida State has done this year to earn being a 7-point favorite over anybody. Honestly, I don't. I'm going to take Memphis into 7 points. Do I think Florida State could win this game? Yeah, I do. They're a better team. That's why it's so disappointing. That's why it's so funny watching Florida State step on the same rake over and over again. You know, you've seen the meme or whatever. The guy steps on the rake, it pops up and hits him in the head. He just keeps stepping on it. Oh, like he doesn't understand. He just keeps stepping on it over. And that's Florida State. If you bet on Florida State and they lose, that's you stepping on the same rake. I can't do it. So I'm taking Memphis plus 7. I think it's possible they win the game outright. I think it's possible Florida State wins the game outright. But I wouldn't put $1 on Florida State right now. Give me Memphis plus the 7. Let's go on to Colorado State. One of the best games of the year last year, bar none. An unbelievable game. In fact, it ended up being one of the most watched games of the year too, which is crazy when you consider the fact that it didn't come on until 10:30 at night. And this is something that the Deion stands just can't wrap their mind around. They're like, oh, if Colorado's so bad, why y'all keep watching them? That is why we watch. Dummy, my God, you ever slowed down when you drove by a car wreck? Why? Because it's interesting. You want to look at it. It doesn't mean a car wreck is good, idiot. That's why we do it. Yes, people like watching Colorado lose. Why? They're arrogant and cocky for no reason. Ain't done anything. Nothing. Zero. Dion getting a pick six 35 years ago ain't got shit to do with being a head coach in college. Some of y'all are starting to figure that out. I told you his entire approach and philosophy was a failure from day one. Just ignoring high school recruiting and turning 80% of the roster over every year. That's not going to work. Offensive line, absolutely terrible again. Shedeur Sanders is regressing through no fault of his own. I still think he's a really good quarterback. But my God, the guy's got no time to throw the ball. You don't even try to run it. I mean, you just abandon the run altogether, period. Just the worst running team on the face of the planet, the worst offensive line on the planet. The defensive line, I think, is a little bit better than last year. But it's not up to par. It's not power 4, power 5 level D-line. It's not. You got absolutely embarrassed by Nebraska this past week, and Colorado State would love nothing more than to do the same. And much like with the Florida State deal, I don't understand. Colorado's a 7-point favorite. Colorado ought not be favored by 7 over anybody on the planet, period. End of story. They got to prove something. They barely beat an FCS team in week 1 in North Dakota State. They get obliterated by Nebraska last week. 100 distractions outside of the actual football per normal. Movie camera crews following 2 or 3 of the players around so they can post dumb shit on Instagram. It's a zoo there. It's a circus. It's not a serious program. It's not a serious place to be, and it's not a football team to be taken seriously. Can they beat Colorado State? They could. They need to protect Shedeur. And Shedeur needs to just get hot. I mean, Colorado State doesn't have anybody that can shut down Shedeur in that group of wide receivers if Shedeur's got time to throw him the ball. Will Colorado be able to run the ball? No. Will they be able to stop Colorado State? No. As far as Colorado State scoring? No. It'll be a high-scoring game. Colorado's going to have to outscore them. Could they do it? Yes. If they can figure out a way to protect Shedeur, yeah. But again, Colorado's 0-2 against the spread this year. They were a 10-point favorite against North Dakota State for no reason. Didn't cover. They won the game, didn't cover the spread. They were, a 7-point underdog last week to Nebraska. Got blown out. They're 0-2 against the spread. About to be 0-3. Colorado could win the game, but I'm taking Colorado State plus 7, plus the points. Now let's talk about Oregon. Of the 3 teams we're talking about here, Florida State, Colorado, and Oregon, at least Oregon has won their games. Now, they've looked absolutely terrible doing it. Undisciplined, penalties, can't finish drives, struggle to run the ball at times, a passing game that makes you want to bang your head against the wall. It's like they just refuse to throw the ball downfield sometimes, even though they've got speed and NFL talent on the outside. It's mind-boggling to watch Oregon just kind of go through the motions the first 2 weeks against 2 teams that have no business even being on the same field with them. Idaho and whoever the hell else it was, South Dakota State or whatever, Boise State, Idaho and Boise State. Maddening. Another team that's 0-2 against the spread. And now they're playing the Civil War game. And this is bad news for Oregon. Oregon on the road at Oregon State. This is one of those games that traditionally is close, even if one of the teams is way better than the other. It's a bitter rivalry. It's a very intense, emotional game. A lot of these kids know each other because they grew up in the same areas or played high school ball against each other. One of these typical like in-state rivalry deals. It's made even more intense this year from an Oregon State perspective because they're the orphan that got left behind. The Pac-12 collapses. Half the schools go to the Big 12, half the schools go to the Big 10, and Oregon State's sitting around like, well, what about me, though? And nobody wanted them. And poor Oregon State got left behind. Now, news out today that the Pac-12 is being resurrected by adding 4 Mountain West teams. I'll make a separate video on that later. But the point is, Oregon State, this is the biggest game of the year for Oregon State almost every year anyway. But particularly this year, they just don't really have anything to play for. There is no Pac-12, so there's no Pac-12 conference game or Pac-12 title to win. They're not good enough to make the playoffs, so they're not going to do that. This is it for Oregon State. At the end of the year, they can look back and say, we beat Big Bad Oregon. And the way Oregon has played the first couple of weeks, I think Oregon State has the potential to do that. And again, you look down at the spreads here, and it's just like, how can you possibly have the confidence it would take to bet Oregon in this game as a 16.5 point favorite? You asked me a month ago, Oregon's a 16.5 point favorite versus Oregon State, I'd say yes. Oregon minus 16.5 all day long. They'll beat them by 3 or 4 touchdowns. What has anybody seen through the first 2 weeks of the season that makes you think Oregon's beating anybody by 16.5? Again, it's not about what we think these teams are. You bet based on what you think these teams are in week 1 when you haven't seen them play. You know, all off season, you're looking at the rosters and the schedule and who they add through the portal and who left and were there any coaching changes and, oh man, the weeks leading up to the start of the season, I hope no starters get injured, but if they do, you're guessing what that might mean. What are these teams going to look like? It's all a guess. It's not a guess anymore. I've seen Florida State shit on their own foot twice. And they ain't played but twice. I've seen Colorado look bad twice. No offensive line twice. No defense twice. Can't run the ball twice. Doesn't even try to run it twice. Selfish players on the field twice. Got the ball with a minute to go in a lead, and the coaches call a running play to run the clock out, which is the right thing to do, which is a rarity for Colorado, one of the worst coach teams on the planet. And the quarterback, Shador, audibles, doesn't want to run it, wants to throw a 50-yard bomb with a minute to go to pad his fake Heisman stats and his draft stock stats. Of course, the incomplete pass stops the clock. The other team ends up getting the ball back with a chance to go down and beat them because, selfish quarterback wanted to pad his stats there. So these teams are bad. They've shown you that. I can't bet on any of these teams. I can't put $1 on Oregon minus 16.5. I can't put $1 on Florida State or Colorado minus 7. No way. I'm taking all 3 of the underdogs in these games. All 3. And let me ask you this. How many of these 3 do you think are going to lose outright? Between Florida State and Memphis, Colorado and Colorado State, and Oregon State. That's 3 favorites. 2 of which were ranked in the top 5 in the preseason. Florida State was in the top 15 in the preseason. And Colorado, they're terrible. They weren't ranked at all because they're not any good. But all 3 of these garbage cans are favored this week over inferior teams. Okay? But that doesn't really mean anything because they were favored over inferior teams last week and the week before, and they couldn't cover the spread in the case of Oregon. They lost the game outright in the case of Florida State, and they're 1-1 overall and 0-2 against the spread in the case of Colorado. I'm not putting $1 on any of these teams to cover the spread. None. I think you either have to not bet the game or you got to bet the underdog with the points. But how many of them do you think are going to win outright out of these 3? At least one of these teams is losing. Either Oregon, either it finally catches up to Oregon, the sloppy play, the penalties, the undisciplined, the can't finish drives, turnovers, dink and dunk all day long for no reason. That might catch up with Oregon and they might get a loss. Florida State might show up looking exactly like we know they are, which is terrible, and a quarterback that can't do anything and take a loss. And of course, Colorado, every single time they take the field, they're a threat to lose. Because they're not very good and they're coached even worse. But at least one of them's going down, I'm confident. But if I bet these games, I'd bet the underdog in every single one. I can't have any confidence. If you bet Colorado to cover and you lose the bet, you look like a complete fool. Colorado is 2-9 in their last 11 games. Going back to last year, they're not any good. Florida State is 0-2 this season, and they were favored in both of those games. Never mind covering the spread, they lost outright. If you take Florida State, Colorado, or Oregon and lay the points and lose, you look like a massive idiot. I'm taking all 3 underdogs plus the points. Have a great day.